and welcome to the Boundless Book Club. You are here with
Ahlam,
Annabelle,
and me, Andrea. On a normal day, you would find us at work doing what we do at the Emirates Literature Foundation, and that includes talking and thinking about books. But just like you, we are bound to our homes right now, so we've taken the conversation online and we hope you will join us. And today we are going to be talking about guilty pleasures. Is there such a thing as guilty pleasures when it comes to books?
Oh, right. Yes. Sorry. My succinct answer on this, I suppose, is there are. I wish there weren't. If I were in a Miss Universe pageant, I would say, no, there's no such thing as a guilty pleasure. We should all read whatever we want. And I've said that many times before. But I think that because of the innate reaction that I have when some people say they're reading certain books, there is such a thing as a guilty pleasure. Because I know how I react a little judgily without wanting to when people say what they're reading sometimes. And I'm like, oh no, I wonder how they'd react when I tell them that I read X, Y, and Z. So yeah, I think there shouldn't be, and we should try and move away from it. That's where I'm at right now in my thinking.
Yeah, I was like, what are the books that I'm embarrassed for anyone to see in my house? What are the ones that are hidden behind the pile in the front? And that's what made up my pile today. And I kind of don't want to go through them. I don't want to show them to you guys.
That we really want to know. What's on top of the pile?
Oh no. Okay, I'm going to start with the one that's least embarrassing to me, honestly. Love Letters of Great Men. And I'm going to tell you why this one is a guilty pleasure, because what inspired me to get it is my previous obsession with Carrie Bradshaw. Now I say previous because it no longer is. Okay, I completely recognize the bad behaviors and the bad decisions that she always made. But in the first movie, she's sitting in bed before she sleeps and she's reading this book, which at the time didn't actually exist, Love Letters of Great Men.
Hold on. Did they write the book after the movie because of the movie?
Yeah.
That's
so
amazing.
It's like it's basically they've compiled together actual love letters of people like Oscar Wilde, Mark Twain is in there, Charles Darwin, Lord Nelson, and it's a really cool collection. So in the book, she's in bed and she's reading it, and she ends the letter by Beethoven. In the end, he says, "Ever thine, ever mine, ever ours," and that was like really famous quote from the movie. And so a couple of years later, I was in New York and I walk into a bookshop and I see this and I was like, ooh, inspired by the movie. But it's actually a pretty cool book. I mean, it's like, all these amazing letters from really a long time. I mean, from 1491. Really, really old letters. So some of them was like people who haven't even seen each other. They've only heard of each other, and they're sort of like have this love relationship that they're is only surviving through letters. And so it's really cool. And I heard a really cool story about letters this week. So a really good friend of the festival was telling us that he was on a plane one day and he has a bit of a beard, and he sees this other guy in the plane that has this much bigger, more magnificent beard. And so he said, I took out my fountain pen and I start writing him a letter. And he says to him, dear, person with amazing beard in seat 9K or whatever. And he says, I just want to write to you and compliment your beard. I'm sorry if you find this letter really strange, but, would you mind taking a photograph with me so that I can go back home and show my wife your amazing beard so that she can know the potential that my beard has to grow into one day. And hopefully this may silence her. And I fear that even this may not silence her. And it's just hilarious. And they ended up being really good friends until today. So, that letter made him gain a friend for life. Doesn't that make you want to write a letter to someone?
Absolutely. I mean, I always have to resist the urge to write letters to people. And one of my guilty pleasure books isn't even a guilty pleasure. It's like a compilation of famous letters through history. So I wouldn't feel guilty about it whatsoever. So it's like your guilt is just from the connection and the backstory.
I think so.
That's what you're embarrassed about. Okay.
Yeah, true. But it's a pretty cool book.
My first guilty pleasure is always going to be a Shopaholic book. This is Christmas Shopaholic. But the first book in the Shopaholic series is what I would recommend to absolutely everyone. And the key conflict is very strong. You've got this character, Rebecca Bloomwood. She's a financial journalist, but she loves shopping. She's got an addiction, and she ends up in masses of debt. And that key conflict, someone who loves shopping, is in debt and should know better, is incredibly compelling to read. I don't identify with this character in any way whatsoever, except it's just incredibly funny, especially in the first book, because she's a financial journalist with debt who has a shopping addiction. And from that very strong key conflict, chaos ensues. And it's always quite fun seeing characters who don't quite have it together, who get into all sorts of scrapes, and then somehow there's always going to be a happy ending. She's going to get herself out of it. They're incredibly funny. They always start with a sternly worded letter from her bank. That's what opens each book. It's either a sternly worded letter from her bank, and they happen like throughout the book as well. So she'll get various letters from shops where she has applied for some like crazy discount, and she convinces herself that everything that she buys on a sale is ultimately saving, and it's the way she justifies these things to herself that's absolutely hilarious. So that's my main guilty pleasure. And my other one I'm not really guilty about, but some people maybe think I should be, and that's Bridget Jones's Diary by Helen Fielding, published in 1996. I think it's still as good today as it was then. And it's interesting, you've got people like me who like it, and then you've got people like Salman Rushdie who rave about it. It seems, it's one of those books that I think it's more universal than, say, Confessions of a Shopaholic. But it's similar in that I have never been 30, single, living in London, but she speaks to me. She's not likable at all. I don't really identify with her, but there is something compelling about the flaws in a female character and the fact that she can still have fun, I think, that's incredibly appealing. I've got a couple of quotes here because it's just incredibly funny, which I thought was relevant for being in quarantine. She says, "Being a woman is worse than being a farmer. There is so much harvesting and crop spraying to be done. Legs to be waxed, underarms shaved, eyebrows plucked, feet pumice, skin exfoliated and moisturized, spots cleansed, roots dyed, eyelashes tinted, nails filed, cellulite massage, stomach muscles exercised. The whole performance is so highly tuned, you only need to neglect it for a few days for the whole thing to go to seed. Sometimes I wonder what I would be like if left to revert to nature, with a full beard and handlebar moustache on each chin."
That's cool. I've watched the movie, but I never read the book, so maybe.
Yeah, I was thinking about that the other day as well, because it's been, the movie is quite well known, and I love the film as well, but when you read the book, she's a lot more acerbic. Like I think she's less likable in the book than she is in the movie. Renee Zellweger makes her a lot warmer, I think, than in the book. And I was just thinking about why she's so popular in general and what's comforting about her. And Helen Fielding actually said that she suspected what Bridget had tapped into was the gap between how people feel they are expected to be on the outside and how they actually feel inside. And that's exactly why it's a guilty pleasure that I think people return to again and again.
I remember when that book first came out, and it was really one of those that everybody was talking about. I feel like it was almost the start of a lot more flawed female characters. There weren't that many people talking about how flawed and obsessed with calorie counting and cigarettes and so on at the time. I think I could be wrong, but I think before that, protagonists were a lot more perfect.
Yeah, I can see that, actually. I can see the way she probably paved the way for that. And it is interesting that it took so long for that to be like a normal thing.
I know, isn't that crazy? I only read it because Sorry, I was just going to say, I only read it because everybody was talking about it, and I was fully prepared to not like it. But it is quite relatable, really. Not necessarily her particular character traits, but the way she inhabits her world is so relatable for most people, I think.
Yeah, just the New Year's resolution page as well. I think that's what starts the book. It's been a while since I've read it, but I just so she starts with this long list of things that she's going to achieve, and that's what connects Shopaholic and Bridget Jones's Diary as well. Is these characters, they struggle with quite big things, debt, addiction, in various different ways. But they are not beaten down at all. They still make their resolutions. They still think, yes, this year, this is my year. I'm gonna do it. In the same way that we all do. We all have renewed bouts of faith and then failure, and faith and then failure. And I think that's really refreshing to read about in straightforward language sometimes.
Yes.
Well, you've totally sold both of your books really well. I'm gonna read both of them.
Oh, cool.
Right, Ahlam.
Andrea, what do you got?
Oh, okay. I've got a very big and heavy book. It's called Pattern by Orla, who's this Irish designer that you might be familiar with. And it's the reason why this is a guilty pleasure is not just because of this book, but what it represents, which is a huge pile of coffee table books that I don't read. I have them and they're really pretty. And this is just, I haven't read a single word in this book, but look at this beautiful mid-century aesthetic. It's lovely. And I have not read a single word, and I don't really care. And they're not cheap, these types of books.
No,
and
they're not
easy to move with, and they don't really fit on the bookshelf very well. So that's my guilty pleasure. It kind of fits in with Shopaholic a little bit, doesn't it?
Yeah. I don't know what it is. It just, something about them attracts you. Like I don't have too many here. We have some travel books. And I have one book, which is like this huge book of world maps, which also is just very, very pretty. Like, and the artwork inside is really, really nice. But if I do go into a bookshop, I am attracted to looking at all these like big chunky like photographic books of even like models or Vogue covers from like the start.
I have that one.
And like shoes and also like interior design and all sorts of things. And there's this huge gigantic book that we have in the office, which is like jewelry from this region, and it's just the most stunning book.
So I think there's a place for these books. I mean, though it's a guilty pleasure, I really don't think it's something you should be embarrassed to have. It's just a quantity.
Yeah. So I don't think you should feel guilty about it either. And in general, I'm trying to say, don't feel guilty about your reading. But so you say you don't actually even read them, but you know that you have them. So is the pleasure in knowing that the beautiful aesthetic is there, like that you own it, and that gives you pleasure that you have beautiful things? Is that where it comes from?
Unfortunately, I'd say the pleasure is in having it for like the first day, and then you forget you have it, and then you go and buy the next one.
So if you were to move country, are you going to take them with you?
Oh God, yes. Absolutely.
You will?
I will.
They're so heavy and difficult to transport.
I know. I mean, we brought them here in the first place 12 years ago or something, some of them. So that's my first guilty pleasure. Should I go on to the second one?
Yes, please.
Okay, this is the big one. No, I'll just before I tell you what it is, I just want to give you the background, which is anyone who knows me knows that I am a horsey person. I love horse riding probably more than most things. And there was a few years ago, there was a period where I couldn't go riding for an extended period of time. So a really good friend of mine gave me this book.
I know
it's called Polo by Jilly Cooper. And it is, honestly, it's the most fun ever. And I don't think this lady gets enough credit for writing such completely bonkers books. They are just all about quite wealthy people around the glamorous world of horses. This one is about people who play polo. There are people with outrageous names like Perdita, Ponzi, something or other. I don't even know what they're called, but it's hilarious. And they have so many little dramas and intrigues, and there are so many different parallel plot lines that I cannot tell you what it's about apart from horses and possibly trying to win back your ex who is now with your cousin, but your cousin stole your horse, so therefore, and it carries on, and it's hilarious.
I want to read this yesterday.
Yes. And I think she's written a number of books that are kind of the same. There's one called
I've seen the covers. I've seen the covers of quite a few of them with, yes, let's just say, well-placed riding props.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, it's hilarious. I want to read more of them, but there's just never a time when I think, is there a guilty pleasure that was published 25 years ago that I can pick up today? However, I did, in preparation for this recording, I did go onto Amazon to look it up to remind myself what it was about. And it said, this title is currently unavailable due to high demand. And it was published in the 90s.
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
Know.
So it has a market. It has its audience.
Yeah, definitely, yes. So there you go.
Cool. So is that all? Yeah. You both have 2 books. I've got this entire pile of embarrassing books.
Can any of them be grouped together?
Yeah, they can actually. Okay, I'll take you through these real quick. So, Babble by Charles Saatchi. This one actually has a story which is pretty cool. So I had this boss 8 years ago, and her and I went off to be really good friends. So I would go into her office and we start talking about work, but the conversation always went on a tangent and we would end up talking about the most random things. And she was one of these people that had like just really good general knowledge about anything and everything and all sorts of things that nobody cares about. But she was so interesting and just really curious. And so when she left, she got me this book. And on the first page, she says, she left me a note which says, for when you miss my random off a tangent chat. So this is basically like Charles Saatchi, and every page is about something different. And it's a mix of like just pictures and his opinions about things. It's basically him going on a rant. And so in the back is like all the different kind of things that he talks about, like your last meal on death row, or like the hideousness of the art world. Love may be blind, but marriage is an eye-opener. Advertising is easy money for school dropouts. It's just like really random things that he talks about, but I do enjoy reading it. I mean, it's a no commitment, like open a random page and just have a laugh. So that's one of my books on the pile. So he's someone who doesn't do any media interviews, so it's a good sort of insight into his life. But he's Annabelle.
I want to pick up on a word that you said there, because you said commitment, and I think that might be a big part of the books that we choose. Like with Andrea, your book, there's zero commitment that you have to make to your coffee table books. They're there for you if you want them.
Yes.
Bridget Jones's Diary, it's always there for me if I want it, and so is Sophie Kinsella. She'll probably have a new one out the moment she's published the next one, that she just keeps churning them out.
No pressure.
And there's no pressure in the same way that there is with other kind of classic literature that is wonderful, and yes, we should read, but there is always this sense, I think, in the back of my mind anyway, that you should finish this and then you will need to discuss it with people and have opinions.
Yes.
But there's no commitment with these.
Piles up. Yeah, that's so true. And I mean, he's not particularly literary. He's a marketing guru. So he had a huge marketing agency in the 80s and 90s. So he just has a fun way of telling stories. And it's like you say, no pressure. And another no pressure collection. And I have to say, this one is like, I struggle with this one because it's like, okay, you have these like micro poems, which are some are quite poetic, and some are just like words placed in a certain form, looking like a poem, but it's actually just a sentence. And and so you struggle with it. But I mean, Rupi Kaur is like the only poet that's ever been on Jimmy Fallon or like on a mainstream daily talk show like that. And there's a lot to be said about that. And it's a New York Times bestseller. So, you know, there is a market, and it does speak to a lot of people, the kind of poetry or, you know, poetic thoughts, let's say, that go into books like this.
I think that's more of a reflection on Jimmy Fallon, but please continue.
Cool. Okay. The words you should know to sound smart.
I love it already.
This is funny because we have 2 copies in the house. So I had bought a copy and my husband bought a copy before we met each other. And then we move in and suddenly there's 2 copies in the house. And we're just so meant to be.
Tell us your favorite word from the book.
Let's just look at a random page and see what there is. Kwanzaa, an African holiday. What else? Kowtow, to give someone every wish. What else? What else is there? Efflorescent, effrontery, effulgent, effusive. There's a whole load of books. If you guys want to borrow, I've got 2 copies in the house.
You know, when you meet those people that are trying to use half the dictionary to sound a certain way, now we know exactly what book they've been given.
Oh, yes.
Exactly. Exactly. Okay, 2 more. Let's start with this. Steve Harvey. Talking about relationships. This is Ahlam in her early 20s trying to get ahead of the game and understand how men think and how women behave and how relationship dynamics work. But I do remember even at the time reading it thinking, you know, Steve Harvey thinks like my dad. He's quite traditional in his thoughts. I'm not sure I agreed with a lot of the things that he was saying. But the movies are really fun too. I think the first one had a movie and it's just really funny and like a romantic comedy type thing.
I had no idea.
No,
I didn't know that he wrote relationship books.
I know he has. I think he had a radio show for a long time. He does Family Feud now, but yeah.
I know him from Family Feud, but that's about it.
Oh, really? You never watched the Steve Harvey show, like his actual comedy sitcom on TV? Cedric the entertainer? No? Yeah, he's funny. Okay, last book. Who doesn't love a good Nicholas Sparks? Annabelle, tell us your notebook story.
Why? No. Oh gosh. Okay, this is the bit where any notebook fans just please don't come at me with pitchforks. So I've never read a Nicholas Sparks book, and I think part of it is that I watched The Notebook, and I don't think that it's a bad film, but I think that the Noah and Ali, the relationship, it really, I don't know. I was watching it with a friend who absolutely loved it, and they did that thing that friends do where they stare at you the entire film.
It's the pressure.
I think it was the pressure that completely ruined it for me. I was like, okay, I have to like this film. It's the best film in the world. But what if it isn't? And that was my thought process throughout the entire film. And I think I watched about half of it, and the rest was just, don't kick me out of the house if I don't like it. I like the bit where at the end. I like the ending. I think that's quite beautiful. I like the twist and everything, but the characters themselves annoy me at the start.
I don't know. I'm a sucker for Nicholas Sparks, and I mean, The Notebook is one of the classics that I could watch once every couple of years. But Dear John, I also love. I don't know if there are any Dear John fans out there, but I love Amanda Seyfried also in the movie, and Channing Tatum is not bad. So yeah, that's the last of my guilty pleasure pile. There we go, guys.
The
Now
Notebook,
you know everything.
now we know everything. The Notebook is one of those really interesting ones because it's referenced in so many other movies and TV shows and jokes.
Classic.
It's got its
a
own life
classic.
now. Yeah.
It does. It does. It's cool.
Well, that was eye-opening.
Do you feel differently now about your guilt, or is the guilt the same, non-existent? How are we feeling?
I don't know. I feel like these books, even if it's something that you wouldn't read today, I feel like they were all a part of your reading journey in one way or another, except for words you should know when you to sound smart. That wasn't a part of my reading journey. It's just curiosity, that one. But everything else, I think, you know, if it made you pick up a book and it represents like a certain time in your life, I think.
Yeah,
which
absolutely.
Is pretty cool.
Yeah, I like what you said there about they've all been a part of our journey.
Yeah.
And we have to give them credit for shaping us in whatever way. Whether they're words that made us sound smarter or made us think like a man. Whatever they are.
Act like a lady, think like a man. So funny.
Andrea, have you changed your mind?
Sorry?
Have you changed your mind at all? Or do you feel exactly the same way?
I feel like I might download another Jilly Cooper book.
Cool.
Yeah. I had not thought about this for such a long time. And by digging through my bookshelves and looking through my Kindle, I feel like I've discovered some very appropriate books to read right now when I want something quite light and funny. So I think maybe some equestrian related intrigue is exactly what I need right now. What about you?
Sounds good. Yeah, no, here's to lightness and comedy always. I mean, I will always love comedy in fiction, and this, I don't feel guilty about it. I shouldn't.
No.
Although the covers on the train don't help, but I'll leave it there. You can tell us your opinions and shoot down all our ideas, suggest a topic, or just tell us about a book you liked by emailing comms@emirateslitfest.com. Or you can send us a message on social media. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and if you are watching this rather than listening, you'll know that we are also on YouTube. If you are listening to audio only, don't forget to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. This has been the Boundless Book Club, the Guilty Pleasures episode. Thank you for listening.